of time with this child. Some of you asked me disparities with race and age and gender. So I thought for this one, I'll tell you, this was actually a Caucasian female, and this was a teenager. So that'll give you an idea of some of the breakdown for this particular kid. So as I said, um, excuse me, this is something that I hear about quite often when I work with kids. And this was someone at random, not a client, just a child at random that, I had the pleasure of meeting. And so I said, okay, let's talk about it. And so we did. Sorry, I had to drink something. I'm getting hoarse. And so this conversation actually led to a couple of other kids coming to me and talking to me about their experiences with dealing with dark things. So let's talk about her. I titled her, or I called her, Child N. And obviously, you do that for those of you who are, students and looking to practice in psychology. I do that because obviously, even though this wasn't a client, you still want to keep these kind of things confidential. So that is not just a state law; that's federal. You have to abide by, all laws pertaining to confidentiality. So my kids that I work with are actually labeled by the alphabet. And so this is Child N. So she approached me. And I thought actually, when I think back, she was approaching me because you know how sometimes kids just need someone to talk to. So I thought that she wanted to just talk to me about something that was going on in her life. Maybe, having trouble with parents or, playing sports or something like that. But this was actually a kid who said to me, no, I want to talk about these dark thoughts that I'm having. And so the way that it was described, and I want you to pretend that you were there, from this child's perspective was, I have these thoughts, but I don't necessarily want to act them out, which is a red flag for me because sometimes that can mean I think about wanting to die. But I'm not going to really kill myself, but I might be thinking that way, right? Which is a red flag for anyone, not just me being a psychologist. But this was different. This was a child who thought about dark things pertaining to hurting other people, but I won't act out on it. But is it wrong? Like, this was a kid who was really processing, is it wrong for me to think about what it would be like to watch someone die? So this is what I mean by catching me off guard, because that was something new for me. And this was a very intelligent little lady who sat with me like a grown woman and had this conversation about, what should I do? Is it wrong? It's not like I want to go out and kill anybody. I'm not going to hurt anybody, but I just been thinking about it lately. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh boy, what are we going to do about this one? So I really wanted to understand this kid and what the thoughts were, what was the reasoning, making sure this child did not have a plan, and it was just something that this kid is thinking about. Now, periodically, I would work with kids who think about death, but not of somebody else's, about their own death, like they would say, I don't understand death, and what is death like? And I'm like, I don't know, I never died before. I make light of the situation just to help them, establish rapport with me. But this girl was like, no, I really want you to process this, Dr. Lisa. And I want you to tell me that if it's something wrong with me. And so we talked. One of the other things I learned was that this child's friends were doing dark things too and having these dark thoughts. So it was a group of kids at this point that I had learned were thinking these same things. Now, if you're in a school, that might be alarming to you. And in this case, I was in a school and I thought, all right, let me get to the bottom of this. And so that's why it was different, because this was actually a group of kids. And in the end, this entire group of kids started talking to me about, demons and Ouija boards and, what do we do with this stuff? And it was a lot. All right. So what I did with this girl is talk to her about different things. So one of the things was, tell me more after I gather information, tell me more about some of the things that you are thinking about doing. And it was more along the lines of, well, I think about, if their heart stops beating, what happens? What if, a demon is telling me to do these things? It was kind of all over the place. So, for one thing, I had learned about this child is that this is a kid who actually could see ghosts. And so I wasn't sure if, because she was tapping into, the dark side of this, if these dark things were actually, maybe manipulating her into this. I wasn't sure. So there was a lot that I needed to unpack with this kid. And so I did. And so as I talked to her, I learned that a lot of her thinking started when she was a little kid. So when I talk to parents about paying attention to what their kids are watching on TV and listening to the radio and being influenced by other kids, this is why. This group of kids have been thinking and doing and trying and working themselves into doing dark things since they were little kids. And when I say little, I might mean like fourth, fifth grade. Long time, because this was obviously, I said a teenager. And so what I said to her was, people typically don't think about harming other people, even if they don't want to act on it. It's just not something that most people think about, daily. What is causing this? What is making you want to think about these things? So the more that I talk to child in without the group, I had learned that she was very vocal about some of the things that she did. And so one of the things that she did quite often is that she played with Ouija boards, which anybody who follows my podcast knows that I don't deal with or like to deal with anything dark, but I almost have to, because I have to get to the bottom of this stuff, like this little girl, and try to push them away from dark things and try to instill light within them if they didn't believe in God. That light to me was me instilling that faith and that hope and that those godly, type of things into her, because that's what's needed in order to fight these dark things. And so these are some of the things that I also share, when I do teach students, in psychology, is that the more you allow yourself to get consumed into what people are telling you, when you are working with them, the more that they trust you and the more that they will tell you things. So I spent a lot of time with this little lady because I wanted to encourage her and to help her find the strength to continue to talk to me. And it actually worked, because she started to talk to me about different things she would learn from playing with a Ouija board. And I would go, well, who are you talking to on a Ouija board? And she goes, oh, it's a spirit that tells me, these things, or it moves, and, all that stuff that I don't get into. I'm like, gosh, should I call her parents? I mean, this is serious, what she's doing. And it was, I talked about kids that are silent when they can see ghosts or when they're playing with dark things. And I talk about kids who, like to express the fact that they do this. And she was very expressive. and talked about how, she actually liked these kind of things. And it's not up to us to judge people, it's just up to us to help them. And that's what I was doing. So, trying to put some interventions in place wasn't the right time. Typically for somebody, not typically, but for some of the kids, I can kind of put some interventions in place to try to help them. This was a kid that I actually wanted to continue to see. And again, she wasn't my client, but I wanted her to tell me, because I know how to deal with this stuff, what needed to happen to try at least to pull her away from, practicing these kind of things, because it was very disturbing. So she talked about dark angels, but dark angels, again, were companions, they were friends, they were positive to this girl. For her friends that she talked about, they were also positive as well. The interesting thing was how she interacted with me, and it's so hard to describe. She would like sit on the edge of the chair and just have this gaze toward me. If you're looking at me, you can see me. Like a gaze, like she just wanted to jump and get me. I can't explain it. And I was watching her closely every time I worked with her. I don't know if you all will understand this. Maybe you will. It's almost like something was possessing her. That's what it looked like. You just kind of had to be there. And I was just kind of watching her closely, watching her body language, just watching her move, her eye gaze. And she never, it was always kind of like this. And I was like, okay, what's wrong with her? She's playing with the dark stuff. She doesn't need to do that. Something is definitely happening to her. But she kept coming to me probably almost every day so that we can deal with this. And it was actually a little unnerving because no matter how much we talked about it, she would continue to um, continue to take a deep dive into these dark things, she and her friends. And so the more, I'm going to skip around a little bit here, the more that I talked to her, the more that I realized they were doing rituals. They were doing rituals, and they were doing um, other cult like behaviors. They didn't harm animals or anything like that because I was checking in, but they really felt like, this was okay. Even though they were teenagers, they were young teenagers. And I was really, really deeply concerned about them, practicing what I interpreted as some cult like behaviors. And it got scary. And it made me think about my own little kids too, about how easy it is, for kids to tap into this stuff. So they were, if you ever watch the movies and you see like a group of witches in a movie doing different rituals to kind of chant different spirits, they were doing stuff like that. Um, they would also kind of feel me out to see if I was even worthy of hearing the things that they had to say. But, this is why I say when you work in this field, you want to hold this position of um, interest to your clients so that they can continue to tell you this stuff. Because these kids kept coming to me over and over and over again because I was really invested in learning, what they were doing. And so they were constantly doing different rituals and chanting, and I wouldn't let them do it around me. Um, that's not an option. They would do it, at home or together, after school, things like that. And it got scary to me. I don't know. When they show this stuff in the movies, it's almost unreal to believe. But then when you actually see it, especially in kids, it's kind of like, whoa, I see this stuff in the movies. This is the kind of stuff that's happening. You guys are diving into things that, You don't understand. Why are you doing this? You're chanting and calling things that can actually come and stay, especially if you don't know how to get rid of it. So that's what they were doing. Um, I didn't have to ask these kids whether they felt like they can see ghosts or anything like that. They just told me. Um, Child N also would share that she had a feeling when things were around. So like when we were sitting together, she had a feeling that I was a safe person, and she had a feeling that I was protected. It was all these feelings about me, and that was the reason that she continued to come around, which was great for me because I wanted to make sure she was safe, and wanted to make sure her friends were safe. And so I had to work to prove I've had to do this before. When I met I wrote a blog about witches for October Ghost Stories, and I had to do the same thing. Sometimes when people are heavily into this stuff, you almost have to gain their trust or prove that you're worthy of learning these things about what they do. And these kids were no different. And once that happened, however, I could ask questions like, well, how often do you have these thoughts? And have you told anyone you have these thoughts? And do you have any plans in these thoughts? And how often do you engage in, these rituals? And are you cutting yourself? Because that is a question that I learned to ask, because I've worked with kids who worshiped Satan, for example. And this is not all people that follow satanic cults, but some of the kids that I've run into, they were actually cutting themselves, and they would cut like the six-sided star in their skin and draw the blood. So I work with a lot of different kids and a lot of different challenges and difficult cases. And I had a boy once draw the same star in his blood on the wall and stuff like that. So some of these questions I was asking because I wanted to make sure these kids were safe too. And so once they were able to trust me, it was easier for me to ask a whole lot of questions, and get answers. So they had that line of thinking. So as far as I knew, they did not, and to this day they have not. They did not want to harm anybody. Child N, had those thoughts of, what would death be like? Um, what would death be like for someone else? Is it wrong for me to think this way? Am I crazy? What can I do about it? Do you see me as someone who has, you know, um, maybe being psychotic because, I'm starting to have these thoughts? And so I concluded that these kids were not a threat. They weren't going to hurt anybody. But there really was a problem because you don't want to leave anyone at all having any type of ideation about harming other people at all. Just like you don't, if people say, I think about what it would be like to die myself, you really want to assess that. That's when the psychology comes into play. And you start to assess whether or not these individuals are serious or not, have done this before or not, have a plan or not, are hopeless or helpless. These are the kinds of things and more, that we do. So after all that, I realized, no, these kids aren't going to harm anyone, but these kids probably do need some type of psychological intervention. So we'll get to that. Because once I started talking about that, she was very hesitant. She was kind of like, I don't know if I need any help. Well, you probably do. But she was like, oh, I don't know if I need any help. Just so you know, I did get her some help. She was kind of like, I just want to talk to you. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. we can talk about this, but I'm not your psychologist. No, I can help you with the side of the paranormal and I can make sure you guys are safe, but you need a therapist outside of me. And I did get her one and some of her friends. Um, the first, the last thing I want you to know about Child N is that one of the things that I knew she was doing was trying not to tell me a lot because she thought maybe she'd be hospitalized. You know, people will be hesitant. Either people will do one or two things. They'll behave as if they have no challenges at all, or when they have some challenges, they'll suppress it because they'll think that maybe I'll get them hospitalized or something like that. There was no reason to hospitalize this child. She did not want to act on, her thoughts. She just had general thoughts about what would this be like. Now, obviously, I was concerned. The other reason I was concerned is because they were doing rituals. I didn't want them doing rituals on animals. That would have really just blown me away. Or, themselves or other humans. So there was a certain point where, we really had to talk about talking to parents about these things. And so we did. So I was able to talk to, her parents and kind of get these interventions put in place to help her. And she actually checked back in with me a couple of times and, she's okay. She's okay. Things are getting better. Um, Her parents did not know that she was tapping into that dark side until we decided to tell them together. And then what they did was they heavily intervened to stop that, which I was really happy about. Um, Anything dark will give me pause with adults or kids. Like I said on my blog many times, dark angels are not your friends. Kids call them dark angels. They are demons. They're not your friends. I repeat that over and over again. And I actually told her that. What they do sometimes is that they pose as if they're friends with these kids, especially the younger ones. And a young teenager is very impressionable. And so when they get into this kind of stuff, um, and I've seen this many times, and they can actually see spirits, and these spirits pretend to be their friends even if they dark. A lot of these kids will migrate toward them and keep them, even the little ones. So it gets really deep, it gets scary. um, but you definitely want to not judge them, bring that positive energy. You want to engage them with spirituality. You can. I teach these kids how to pray. I teach them how to remove these dark spirits from their lives and their aura, just from seeing them, because they don't have to see them if they don't want to. So those are the kind of things that I did wind up teaching Child N and her friends. As far as her friends go, they're okay. As far as I know, the last time I actually interacted with them, um, her parents intervened to try to separate the kids or her from the kids so that they can stop the cult like behavior. I don't know if they were just interested in it or if they were just really getting too far and it got too far or what happened, but they were very deep into doing different rituals and stuff. And it's scary when you deal with kids like that. You don't know which direction they're going to go. So you want to make sure that you remove or separate these kids from each other. And that's what her parents did. So that's blog 57. Blog 58 is called Beloved. And I'm going to get into blog 58 really quickly and I'm going to start it. So I don't know if you all have seen the movie Beloved. I laugh because I remember the first time I saw it, it creeped me out. Oh my God, that movie creeped me out. To this day, I cannot watch the movie Beloved. But anyway, it's from 1998 and it's by Miss Toni Morrison. So if you haven't had the opportunity to see Beloved, I am going to recommend it to you. Mm. When I started working with kids who can see ghosts, Beloved. The music is not on. Beloved. Oh, maybe it is. I'm sorry. Is it off now? I'm sorry. I did not mean to have the music on. I'll tell you what I did. I turned it off on my computer and not on the podcast, guys. I'm sorry about that. Thank you. Somebody just told me that's good. Love that feedback. Thank you. Beloved is a movie by Toni Morrison. I think it was in 1998, so a long time ago. Although 1998 seems like it was yesterday. Um, when I watched that movie, that was before. Let's see, I came out in 94, 96. That was before I started seeing kids at all as a child psychologist. And that was a long time before I actually encountered a child who could see ghosts. So when I did start seeing kids, just at random, because again, when you work in community mental health, you don't choose your clients. In community mental health, there's typically a waiting list, and you get the kids off of the waiting list. So these were just random kids that I would get, and I would see them. No connection, didn't know them. Sometimes I didn't even know their stories because I didn't always look at their backgrounds. So when I started seeing um, kids, and then some of them who could see ghosts, I actually thought about Beloved, and that's why I wrote the blog. And I wrote it because a lot of what happened in that movie with Beloved is exactly the way that the kids describe dark angels. And so to them, if they were watching the movie Beloved, Beloved would be a dark angel to them. Let me pause real quick. I'm going to answer your questions. Is my job hard as a psychologist? Yes. Sometimes it's hard. Um, if you go to the website, which is my name, LisaLigginschambers.com, it will tell you all about the podcast and it will tell you all about the blog. What I do is I talk about my experiences in psychology with families, especially children and children who can see ghosts. Although I'm changing my blog and my podcast up in the beginning of the year, and I'm going to answer more questions pertaining to psychology. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you for asking. So let me give you an example about Beloved. If you saw the movie, you saw how Beloved would attach to Oprah Winfrey's character, and Oprah Winfrey was actually the mother. And so when these kids that I've worked with, when these spirits come into their lives or they can see them, they attach to these kids just as Beloved did. It's almost a mirror image of what the kids have told me happens to them. So they show up the same way. They can see them as Seth saw Beloved, right? And Beloved was manipulative. Beloved was trying to get what she wanted from Seth. She was the deceased daughter, right? So when you think about the experiences of the kids, what happens is these kids start to not just get used to and adjusted to these dark spirits being with them, but they also consider them a friend. So Seth didn't want Beloved to leave. That's how some of these kids feel. They don't want these entities to leave them. They just want them to be with them, and it's the same feeling that Seth had when you, if you have watched the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So the reason that I wrote this blog is because what I want to give my readers and all of you is a perspective that comes from the kids, so you can understand and imagine yourselves by way of this movie here of how they might feel. And so it wasn't easy for, even for child N, to make these things go away, especially when they don't know how to make them go away. So I thought this was a good comparison to what the kids experience and how they feel about some of the even the angels, the God's angels that come around them. They just don't want them to go away. The reason Beloved scared me is for a lot of reasons. Number one, once I started working with kids who can see ghosts, this stuff really became real to me. Somebody actually said today something very powerful. If kids can see ghosts, who are we to judge? They can see ghosts, whatever, right? It is what it is. And I just looked up and said, yes, a whole lot of them who can do that. And if you haven't encountered them yet, you will in this field. And they just say, yeah, and I'm not going to judge them. And I said, that's key. Don't do that, because they'll tell you everything you need to know. And so over the years, I started learning how to interact with these kids, what to do, what to say, what not to say, how to deal with them, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes they see, and this is their perspective, not mine. Sometimes they see ghosts who behave just like Seth. And that's why sometimes you'll hear me say on my podcast that some of these writers and producers probably actually see ghosts, because these movies mimic exactly what these kids tell me. Exactly. And so it, Beloved was messing with them at night. Beloved was wouldn't go away. She was opening closets. She was there. She was talking to them, interacting, walking with them outside. These kids say they follow them to school, all kinds of stuff. And so for these children that have come to me, sometimes it is not so easy for them to ignore, because there was no way that Seth could have ignored Beloved. And so the kids don't disregard these ghosts because they can't. The way that they describe them to me is in another way that they describe them is that, sometimes when they wake up at night, they are there. When they are opening closets, they're there. They just don't go away. And these kids sometimes are really lonely, and a ghost like Seth will befriend them, taking them away from these kids is difficult because they believe that they are their friends, even the dark ones. Child N did not necessarily consider them her friends, but she could definitely see them. But I'll tell you what kid did befriend entities like Beloved. It was Child A. If you go back to the beginning of my blog, you'll remember Child A, the first child. Who used to always tell me, they're so nice, but they're dark. They're dark angels, stuff like that. So, as I put in the blog, they're not Casper the Friendly Ghost, and neither was Seth. Beloved, if you saw the movie, she was not Casper the Friendly Ghost, not at all. So, when I'm working with these kids, it gets very deep and it's very real, and it has happened numerous times to me, over and over and over again, even out of the country. Child A is one who I kind of talked about um, in this blog quite a bit about Beloved because child A was enamored by demons and started to have poor behaviors because of the influence that these things were having on him. And so he was definitely um, friends with them. I'm not gonna excuse me, I'm not gonna give that one away. I want you to read the blog about that one. But it gets tricky and it gets hard. So this blog is actually not geared toward anyone believing that these things happen or that these stories are true. They're absolutely true. For one, I'm not going to lie to the public like that. But two, these are the experiences that I've had over 20 years. And I decided to write them down and kind of give, some examples of what this is like for these kids. So think about Denver. Denver was Beloved's sister, right? Denver could see Beloved, just like Seth could, the mother. Paul D, who was, I believe, Seth's boyfriend, could could he see Beloved? I think he could see Beloved. Yeah, I think he saw Beloved. And so they all saw this entity. And that's sometimes what happens in families too, because I've worked with kids whose parents can see ghosts as well. Yeah, you can share what you saw. You can chime in and talk on the show if you want to. Somebody is asking on Podbean if he could tell his story. Yeah, you can if you want to. You can just call into the show. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, I can hear you
How
pretty
are
well.
you doing?
How am I doing? I'm doing
Yeah,
great. Good.
good. I'm glad you called in.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Enjoying a cup of hot chocolate because it's a little cold over here.
Is it snowing where you are?
No, no, we just got hit all of a sudden. It was a massive cold front, and every day it's just a little bit colder. So
Oh God,
I don't want to. Yeah.
it's freezing here. It's 25 in Illinois, in my part of Illinois. So,
Oh, okay. No, I'm in Texas. It's hot here. It doesn't. Yeah.
yeah, jealous. So, what's your story? You want to share it?
Well, let me see. How much into the paranormal are you? Because some of this gets really dark and scary.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not afraid. That's what I've been doing, talking about today, anyway, with
Sure.
child in.
All right. So a number of things happened when I was a kid. Um, so I would see a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and okay. So I think that the first frightening thing for me was once when we were living in a two-floor house, and I saw this black figure peeking in through the. It was kind of like he was crouched down on the stairs, kind of like peeking to see what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed it, and I stared at it. It freaked me out,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked like a kind of like a black circle with ears. I'm not sure if that person was bald because I couldn't see any shadow of hair or anything. It just looked like a black circle with ears, and then you could see something like a skeleton inside the black shadow.
Mm-hmm.
It was very weird,
Mm-hmm.
and it was peeking. It was kind of like trying to hide itself and trying to see what we were doing. And then a few years later, I remember this once when I was sleeping with my parents because I was so very young. So it was cold that night like it is right now, and we didn't have like uh, a heater.
Mm.
So my parents decided to like put me in there in the bed like between them, you know, like all spoiled like a kid. Um, so I wake up at night all of a sudden, and I'm just like looking around, and it's dark. There's a little bit of light coming in from the like the street light coming into the room, and there was something moving all of a sudden, and I was like, "Ooh, what's that?" So I was just like looking at it, and it was this little being, kind of like
Mm.
a kid the size of like a 4 or 5 year old,
Mm.
and he comes into the room, and he walks up to the bed, and then he comes up to one side, and again it's just a shadow, so I can't see his face or anything, and it's looking at us, kind of like to make sure we're sleeping, and
Mm.
I just held like really really still because I was like really scared,
Mhm.
and it was just like whatever it was looking at, it was just like looking at us, you know. I was being like really careful. So like stay there for a few seconds, and I guess it thought that I was sleeping, so it turned around and it walked up. It ran up to the desk. My dad had a desk and his computer and everything. It's like kind of like those old school desktop computers.
Yeah.
So it walks up to it. My dad had an office chair, so he sits in the office chair and he starts playing with the chair. He starts like, you know, he sits down on it and he starts like rolling to one side and to the other side. He's just like playing with the chair. And then he comes up to the computer and he starts playing with the keyboard. He's kind of like playing that he's like typing something in there. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? You know,
Yeah,
what am I
really. I
seeing?
just held up my keyboard in the
And
camera.
yeah. And all of a sudden it turns around. It turns around as if something surprises you and you turn around to see it.
Mhm.
And it turned to see something like outside of the room, kind of like in the hallway or something.
Mhm.
And it gets up and it runs away.
Mm.
And in that same house, I remember we had a seesaw where you know, we would play with the seesaw. And then when it was dinner time, my mom was like, "Okay, so put away all your toys because we're gonna go have dinner." So we would. And then on that occasion, the bedroom door was closed. So we finished eating dinner, and we opened the door, like all of us kids. We opened the door, and the seesaw is moving up and down on itself.
Mm, 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 mm.
There's there's no one on it, and it's moving up and down. It's balancing, and then we're like, "Look!" And I guess whatever was putting its weight on it disappeared or something, and then it just started swinging back and forth as if someone was just recently playing on it. And then they got off.
Mm.
Um, Another situation, uh, we had bunk beds, and I was sleeping on the top bed, and I woke up at night because I needed to go to the bathroom. And so I'm looking around and I'm like, man, it's really dark. I don't want to go to the bathroom alone. If it's dark here, imagine how dark it must be in the hallway. Like, so I was like looking and everybody was sleeping. And I'm just like, oh, well, I guess I can just run in the bathroom. So I get up. I'm over here like pushed against the wall to get up. And I look down and there's these two tall creatures, white, white, like mummies, like
Mm.
really white, like flour. And they were like 6 feet tall.
Mm.
They were tall.
Mhm.
And I look down and I see them, and they look up and they see me. And I'm like, so I'm just like,
Mhm.
I'm like frozen. and they're looking at me. They look at me for like 3 seconds, and they turn around to look at each other, and then they turn around to look at me again. It's kind of like they're trying to like figure out like what is this? It's kind of like the same way I'm seeing them, they're seeing me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like I got up and I ran through them, and they just let me through, kind of like just like normal people. If a kid runs through you and your partner, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
you let that person through. So they just let me through, and then they were just looking at each other like they were really confused, you know.
Yeah.
And so I went to the bathroom, and I came back, and I just like carefully like came into the room, and I just like peeked to see if they were still there, and they were gone. Yeah, they were they were gone, and
This is all in
I
the same house?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so there's another story. This one's gonna really like is gonna freak you out. Hopefully, it doesn't give you nightmares. So
As long as it's
my
not
cousin.
beloved, I'm good.
Okay, all right, just warn you.
All right.
My cousin,
Woo. We
my
ready?
cousin was sleeping in those bunk beds, the same bunk beds,
Mm-hmm.
and his mom, which is my aunt, she had long hair back then. So he says that he woke up one night and he saw a lady who looked like her.
What?
And he said that he was convinced that that was his mom. And this lady, sorry, I'm getting goosebumps. This lady um, starts signaling with her hand, like, come here, come here. Like, she starts, doing that movement with her hand.
Mm-hmm.
So he says that he was just like looking at her because he didn't really know if it was her or not. So the lady walks up to her and to him, I'm sorry, and tells him, hey, come here, come. And he was like, okay. So he follows the lady to the bathroom, all the lights off and everything, because he thought it was his mom. Uh, the lady puts him inside the bathroom, and she closes the door and locks it behind him.
Mm.
So he said, like, once he was like fully awake, and this lady came up to him, he saw it was a different person. It was not his mom.
Mm-hmm.
So this lady grabs him by the neck and starts choking him. So he's just like strangling him in the
Mm.
bathroom. So he starts to kind of like shake and try to like get out of the way. And it's kind of like you're being attacked by something. Sometimes something works.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened. That's what happened this occasion. Something happened, and he was able to get out of her grip, and he was able to go back. So the next day, we all wake up, and he's really scared, and he's
Mm-hmm.
pale and stuff. So he couldn't talk for a few days after that. He was like in shock,
Mm-hmm.
and we were trying to like talk to him, like, "Hey, what happened? This and that," but he wouldn't say anything. He would just like go into the bed, and he would just go into like one corner, and he would stay there. He was like really, really scared.
Mm-hmm.
So after like 3 or 4 days later, um, he finally started talking again, and he told us what happened to him.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay. So
You can
I
keep
had a
talking.
demonic experience once
You
as a
did?
kid. Yeah, I actually had two that I remember of
As a kid?
as a kid. Yeah,
Mm.
one of those was in that same house. Um, so later, like my parents got separated, and my dad moved out, so he wasn't there anymore. And my mom had to work graveyard. So usually my sister's taking care of me and stuff. So this one night, my sister was there, and I was sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden I start feeling really like frightened for some reason. And I was like, why am I feeling like that? I don't understand my feelings, you know?
Mhm.
So I get up from the couch and I run to the bathroom and I knock on the door. And my sister's like, hey, what's up? I'm in the bathroom. And I'm like, hey, can I come in there with you? I'm really scared. And then she's like, why? What's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel really, really scared. And she's like, okay. So she opens the door and I get in. And she's like, what's out there? And I'm like, I don't know. I can't see anything. I just feel really, really scared for some reason. And she's like, okay, well, we'll just stay here, I guess, you know. So she was like taking off her makeup and stuff because it's already like nighttime. So um, she stops all of a sudden and she's like, hey, you hear that? And I'm like, hear what? And she's like, I don't know. I think somebody's inside the house. And she's like, did you see anything? And I'm like, no. So she locks the door and she gets on the toilet. There was a little gap like on top of the door. And she's like, I'm gonna peek through here. Let me see what I can see. So she peeks and she's like, there's no one there, but things are moving. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, things are moving, but there's no one there. So I hear this loud shelf open in the kitchen, and she's like, "Oh my god!" Like the drawer open,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I was like, I think I remember crying at that time. I was like really really scared,
Mhm.
and I just kept telling her like, "Don't go out there, don't go out there." And um, she gets down from the toilet and she's like, "Oh my god!" And I'm like, "What? What's going on?" And she's like, "The knife is floating in the air," and I start hearing this noise. Um, it's kind of like something that's furious, kind of like a furious bull.
Mhm.
You know how you could hear it
Mhm.
breathing and
Mhm.
exhaling. That's what it sounded like, and it was like really, really loud. So all of a sudden, um, I hear this knock on the door, and the knife gets thrown to the bathroom door. And then my brother, he had arrived. I guess he scared it off or something,
Mhm.
but he was knocking on the door. So he opens the door and he's like, "Hey, why don't you guys open the door?" And we were just like scared. And I look at the drawer, the kitchen drawer, and it was open just like I had heard, and the knife was on the floor.
Mm. Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we tell him what happened, and he's like, "Well, did someone break in or something?" He's like, "No, no, we can't explain it. Like we couldn't see anything, you know." Okay, so second one that I had, um, my youngest sister was in middle school. We had already moved to their house. She was in middle school,
Mhm.
and her teacher asked her to bring a doll because they were gonna do like folklore or something. I
A
don't know. They
dog.
were gonna do something to that thing. Yeah. So her teacher had asked her for homework to bring a doll, right? So my mom goes out and she looks for a doll, and they bring this doll that looks like the freaking Chucky, but like really like slimmer,
Oh
you know.
wow.
And I'm like, where did you guys, where did you guys, out of all the dolls you could find, like, why did you pick the creepiest one, you
Mhm.
know? And my mom's like, well, I don't know, like, the teacher wants this. I couldn't find anything, and I just like brought that doll. Like, okay, so um, I don't know why, Lisa,
What is
but
it?
every time that I was in the bedroom and that doll was there, I felt really, really uneasy.
Yeah.
And a few of the times, I wasn't even aware that that thing was in the room until I would look around and see it.
Mm.
And I'd be like, oh, that's why, you know?
Because the doll was in the room.
Yeah, but okay, so it's one thing if you know it's there and it scares you, but how's it gonna make sense if you don't even know it's there and you look around and you see it,
Hmm.
you know?
I have.
So I would take it. Hmm?
I was gonna say I have a whole blog dedicated to dolls. Haunted dolls.
Okay,
Yep.
so this one really scares me. That's probably why I'm scared of dolls now. Um, so I would always take this doll and I would put it outside. I would put it somewhere else.
Oh boy.
Um, yeah.
I know what you're gonna say before you
So,
say it.
huh?
I think I know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
Okay. So, um, smart me one day. I was like, I hate this freaking doll. It's always making me feel uneasy. It's always making me feel scared. Like, sometimes I'd even wake up feeling uneasy, and that freaking thing would be in front of me, and then I'd be like, like, who puts that thing in the bed? You know what I mean? Like, I'd wake up feeling uneasy. I turn around, that freaking thing was right next to me. You know. So like, I freaking hate this thing. Whatever. So I was like, okay. So since I know there's something in this thing, I grabbed it and I sat it down in the bed, and I'm like, okay, show yourself.
Mm.
Like, let's go. What you got? You know, I'm tired of you making me feel scared. I'm tired of making me feel uneasy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's in there? Show yourself. Okay. So I felt like whatever was in that doll that was looking at me was really like malevolent. All right. So I took that doll and I just like put it outside. And the next day, I think it was the next day, I came back from school. I had all my books in my bag. And the teacher had asked us to like only bring the books that you need because then you have to carry all that weight. So I was doing that. I was organizing my backpack, and I turn around as if I see someone. There's no one there, and it was presence. So I'm looking at it, and it scares me more and more and more. It turns into like a really deep, frightening feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It felt the same way I felt like back a long time ago when that thing in the bathroom happened. And this thing starts to get closer to me, Lisa.
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
The freaking light bulb turns off, and it felt really, really crowded. It felt like I was in there with like 1,000 people, and the light bulb turned off. So in my mind, I don't know how, I start thinking, do a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Something was telling me,
Mm-hmm.
pray,
Mm-hmm.
pray, do a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like shivering. I was like scared. I was shaking. The light was off. I couldn't see what was in front of me. I started doing a prayer, and in less than a second, everything went away.
That's right.
The light came back on and everything, and whatever was there was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a deep feeling of peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I only got as far as 2 words in my prayer.
All you have to say is God's name. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then, a long time later, I tell my mom that my mom she didn't really believe in that. She's like, you kids are always like playing and messing
Mm-hmm.
around, or y'all gotta stop telling those lies, And I was like, okay. So like a few months later, I tell my brother, and he's like, well, every time that I would come out here and get on my laptop like late at night,
Mm-hmm.
I would put that thing outside. He's like, why? And he's like, well, because somebody would leave that doll out here in the living room. And every time I come back, every time I had to like step away and come back, that thing was somewhere else.
I
It was
knew
like someone had moved it.
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew it.
Yeah, well,
Hmm.
did you see it? And he's like, no, but it's like, it's 1 in the morning, everyone's sleeping. I'm on my laptop. I have to get up, go to the bathroom or something, and I come back, and that doll is somewhere else every time I do that.
Yeah.
And he's like, so I took it and I threw it outside, and then the next day it was back inside again. And then I got yelled at because somebody found it. Somebody found it across the street.
Oh my
And yeah, Lisa.
oh my gosh. Did you ever research to find out what could have possibly happened in both houses, or did you have any answers?
Mm, well, my sister was well, she still is. My sister is very gifted.
Mm-hmm.
She's like that girl like from the movie, like I see dead people. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep. Uh-huh.
And okay, so I have my mic on, so maybe I can show you. Um, in that house where the my cousin was strangled, every night we would hear this.
Oh heck no. I would have had my
In the
Bible
house.
floating around the house.
Okay. So
Oh my
yeah.
god.
So we would hear that every night. One time this girl is stressed. She was like stressed out. She was cleaning the kitchen. She was stressed out. The back door was like right next to the kitchen. So she turns around and she's like, "Who's there?" And the thing just stops.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just looking at it like, well, I guess that works. So she told me that night she had a dream. She told me I dreamt that I came up to that room, to that door, um, and someone knocked. But it wasn't that knock that we heard the whole time. It was just like a regular knock.
Oh.
She's like, I come up to the door in my dream and I open it, and there's this old guy in a wheelchair. And he's like, finally, after all this time, someone opens the door. You know how long I've been sitting here knocking on that door? And then she's
What?
like, yeah, she's like, you remember that poking noise or whatever that we could hear? Like, yeah. He's like, well, that old guy, he was sitting there with a wheelchair, and he had a cane. He's like, so I guess he was taking the cane and he was using that to knock on the door.
And this was a ghost?
Yeah. And she said after that, that's when that noise stopped. After that day that I had the dream.
So she saw him.
In the dream, yeah.
Wow.
She told me that in that house, she dreamt that she was outside and that there were these two girls playing on the roof.
Mm.
She's like, it's weird. It's like there were two girls on the roof playing, and they got too close to the edge, and they fell off, and they died. And she's like, I had that dream like 3 or 4 times in the same house. So she's like, I don't know what's there, but she's like, I think somebody did witchcraft in that house.
I was going to ask you about that.
Okay, so my dad rented that house. It was like that's when my parents separated. So he had that house there for my mom, for us. And when he met the owner, he came and he told my mom, like, that guy is crazy. And then she's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, he's telling me all this baloney. Like, he'd always say that, like, he'd always call that baloney. Like, he's telling me all this baloney about all these ghosts or whatever. He's like, that guy's crazy. And she's like, well, what do you mean? What does he tell you? He's like, he says that people live here for like 6 months and they leave because things move on their own and things happen without any explanation. So,
Hmm.
but he's full of it. You know what I mean? This house is perfect. You know what I mean?
And so
And
that was the house you grew up in, right?
yeah,
The first house. Okay.
um, in that house when we got there, Lisa, yeah, like the first day I remember that they would take me there to help out, and my dad would always bring like an orange igloo. I like the ones that they would sell like back in the day
Mhm.
for water.
Mhm.
And in every bedroom, in every corner, there was a coin in every corner.
A what? I'm sorry.
A coin, a coin like money.
Really?
Yeah, there was a coin in every corner
Huh.
in every bedroom.
Huh.
So we as kids, we were like, "Hey, we found coins," you
Mhm.
know, and we found a lot of coins, like tons of them. And then all the kids would come back like, look at all these coins I found. And my dad's like, where the heck are you guys getting all those coins from? And then we're like, they're in all the corners. And he's like, what do you mean they're all in the corners? Like, yeah, they're in all the corners of the house. And he was like, okay. He's like, whatever, I'm busy, I have things to do. So he just did disregard it, you know.
Mhm.
So that's that. And then the neighbor was very like particular. Like it's just like it's a weird story. Okay, so in that house, um, the supposedly there was a family that was living in that house, right?
Mhm.
It was the parents and the kiddos. So the kiddos grow up and they move out, and they it's like one of them got married. Some I don't know I don't know the full story. One of them comes back to the house, but he doesn't want to kick his parents out, right? He doesn't want to take them out of the house. Since there was a lot of like terrain,
Mhm.
he decides to build a second house next to that house, and he puts his parents in there. The parents died in that house. Like they got old and they died.
Mhm.
The son is like a lawyer or something, so he had to leave the city. So he knew the neighbor. So he tells the neighbor, hey, as long as you stay here and you take care of the house, you don't have to worry about anything. I'm not going to charge you anything. So the neighbor moves in with his wife, and that's how they were living there. You know,
Okay.
so he was very particular with the parts, especially like outside, like the backyard. He was very particular with what he wanted people touching for some reason. You know, and they had these like they had a stack of bricks on one
Mhm.
side of the yard, and
Mhm.
every time we would like play with those bricks, he'd be like, "Hey, leave that alone." Like, why? And he's like, "Because you guys are taking off the bricks, and there's stuff down there that you guys are not supposed to see." Like, okay. So one day, my oldest brother, he's like a monkey, just like messing around with everything. So he goes in there, he comes back, and he's like, "Look what I found." You know what that thing was?
A bone?
No, it was a shotgun shell.
What?
Yeah, he found a freaking shotgun shell in there in those bricks.
What did you think that meant?
So I don't know. I don't know, honestly.
Did you ever get any answers from your sister about the paranormal activity at all, other than her dreams?
Um, well, that's the thing. She's seen a bunch of things, but I don't really get into it because it's really scary.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
it's like now that both of my parents they passed away. She tells me,
I'm sorry.
it's okay. She tells me like, they're in a room, and they're like, what room? And she's like, I have this dream a lot where I go into this room. And she's like, I don't like that room because it's a very uneasy feeling and time doesn't exist in that room.
Mm.
So I've seen my dad in there. I've seen my mom in there. I've met people in there who tell me that they're part of my dad's family.
Mhm.
Um, she's like it's like they're there. It's like what the Bible says that you're waiting for the judgment day. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
And she's like, the other day she was like, I had this dream, and it took me back to that same room, and there was this lady, and she was like, hey, come here, I'm gonna talk to you about something. And she's like, she takes me over and she sits me down in the chair, and she starts telling me all these things about herself. And she's like, it's a very weird room, but they're all in there.
Mm.
They're in there, like sitting down in wheelchairs and stuff. And it's like a waiting room.
Mhm. Now, are you able to see ghosts or your sister?
I stay away from it, honestly.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it's
I'll tell
scary
you
to
one
you.
more.
Yeah.
Okay, and with good reason.
I
I'll tell you
mean,
good
yeah,
reason.
given your
Okay,
experiences, yeah.
okay, I'll tell you one more. So it's
Okay.
short, so don't worry.
I'm not worried.
So we had this thing back when I was a kid. We used to go outside and play volleyball. And one day we were playing. Um, the ball goes over like to the neighbor's side. They had a bunch of trees in there. They had like a bunch. They had orange trees. They had like a lemon tree, and in the corner over there of the neighbor, they had like cactuses and stuff. It get like really really dark at night. Um, there's kind of like a dark spot. Can't
Mhm.
really see anything. So one time the ball goes over there. Everybody's like, "Nope, I'm not going in there. Nope, nope." That's like I can't even see anything. I'm like, "Okay, I'll go." So I go up to the tree and like into the cactus, and I'm looking for the ball. And I kid you not, I heard a roar, like a lion's roar. It was
Mhm.
really really loud, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and I was looking, I was trying to like see what it was. I couldn't see anything. It just freaked me out. I picked up the ball and I just like ran the fastest I could. And everybody's like, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" And I'm like, "At this, I'm
I'm
going
out of here.
inside." Yeah, I was just out of there. Like the Sonic Boy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, I really appreciate you sharing your experiences. That's a lot, but I tell people all the time that, these things are real. People actually do have a lot of stories to share about the paranormal, which is part of the reason why I started writing about it, on behalf of all the kids that have experiences just like you. You have, and actually, some of the things that you talked about in your stories, I've written on my blog. For example, the um, the doll. I wrote a whole blog about that. I knew you were going to say you put it outside and it would come back. I knew that. I wrote about. I think I wrote about the animal sounds. I've written about animals. So a lot of things that you talked about parallel some of the stories that kids have told me over the years. Yeah, from objects floating. When they're in school, these things will take their pencils and write for them and follow them around. And yeah, I totally believe you.
Well, I remember this once when I was a kid. I was hanging around with my friends and we saw a ball of fire
Mm-hmm.
floating around the air.
Mm-hmm.
Later,
Yeah.
they told us that it was a witch.
I wrote about witches too over in October. So, my stories aren't a couple of them are my own personal stories, but all of the ones that I'm writing about are just based upon what kids have told me that I've worked with over the years. And a long time ago, I used to always tell the kids that one day I'll write about your stories because people need to hear them. A lot of the kids were medication and taken to psychiatric hospitals. And sometimes I would see these kids and go, well, you're just as completely sane as I am, unless I'm not sane. You're just telling a story about things that you can see, and I don't know why you're hospitalized because of that. If you aren't planning to hurt yourself or somebody else, they have stories just like you do. But it was so many people who wouldn't believe them or thought that they had, some type of psychosis going on, that they would
Yeah.
hospitalize these kids. And this is like,
Mhm.
you're a prime example of having stories, but you're not psychotic. You're telling your experiences, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I wish I could,
Yeah.
you know, get you to write about these things so that I can actually add them to my blog, because this is fascinating.
Do you want me to? I could if you
Sure.
want to.
I would completely
Okay.
appreciate that. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
And you can chime in at any time and tell us more of your stories. I'm sure you have
Yeah.
more.
Well, personal stories. I have this one where sometimes I get it, and I always tell people this. I have a phrase when bad things are happening. I tell them, "The devil is hungry,"
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And yeah, the devil is hungry, and I know the devil's hungry. So, um, I grew up in uh,
You there?
I shouldn't have hung out with. Huh?
You you can save it for next time if you want to.
Okay.
I'm here on
Um,
Wednesdays at 7 o'clock, or you could write it on my blog or to me, and I can always tell your story minus your name.
okay. All right. When are you on again?
Every Wednesday at 7 o'clock Central Time, your time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
So I guess we're out of time.
yeah, yeah, that's yeah. I don't want to keep everybody until like 9 o'clock, but I can certainly listen to your stories probably for the next hour or two, because they mimic so much of what I talk about, and they're completely fascinating. And I know some of the listeners probably have so many questions, and if I get questions from them, I will certainly ask you if you call in next week and talk about your stories, or I will write to you if you write on my blog and just give all of their questions to you. It's not every day that you encounter someone that's had these kind of experiences. My stories are from a collection of 20 plus years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Sound good?
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds great. Yeah.
Good. Thank you so
I,
much.
I just hope I don't give you nightmares.
Oh, please. If I haven't had, let me tell you, you should read my blog, because if I haven't had nightmares, I could have some serious nightmares, but I have not had them. So I'm used to it. I'm very,
Okay.
very
All right.
used to it.
Okay.
All righty. We'll see you next week.
All right. Yeah. Sure.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good night.
Okay, you too. Well, that was a long podcast, guys. We have to thank him. He was fantastic with coming in and telling the story. It makes me so happy. Thank you so much to my caller. Thanks to all of you for chiming in. He sounds like he is going to call back next week and tell us some more about his stories. And of course, I'll be writing my own on my blog. So you guys have a good night. Thanks for hanging in there. I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you all next week. Bye bye.